Let's call in the members who participated in the committee deliberations to talk about what transpired. Deputy Conservative Leader Lisa Raitt, NDP MP Nathan Cullen, the point person on this issue, and for the Liberals committee member and motion presenter, Randy Boissonault. Okay, appreciate coming in. I'm going to start with you, Randy, because a number of people are very key to this, to finding out what went on. Jody Wilson-Raybould, staff in the Prime Minister's office, and they were specifically excluded from the motion you put forward today. Why are you doing that? How can you get to the bottom of some problem like this when you don't have the key players involved?
Well, I think what needs to be said is the Justice Committee has a responsibility to take a look at issues that matter to Canadians. And in this case, we are talking about what's appropriate for people to talk about when you're in cabinet, other offices of government. And what's clear in the motion is that we want to take a look at that piece, which is known as the Shawcross Doctrine. We also want to talk about remediation agreements, because that's one of the issues that people are accusing SNC-Lavalin of.
That would be the same remediation agreement that you snuck in an omnibus bill and never debated when it passed the first go-round, right?
Well, it came to Justice Committee, and people debated it. I cited them today. It was November 7th when that came to the committee. I think what we can say is, look, Miss Jody Wilson-Raybould is able to speak on this matter at any time, and the Ethics Commissioner is able to, it will be investigating. Mm-hmm. And I think what's important to note is that when you're a cabinet minister and you go to another portfolio, you can't speak on what happened in that previous portfolio. And she's bound by solicitor-client privilege.
So she can't speak when she wants to.
She can't speak on this issue, but what I can say is that the Prime Minister has asked Attorney General Lametti to take a look at this issue to see how that solicitor-client privilege could be removed.
And Mr. Lametti is one of the people you say can speak at that committee.
He said that if the committee asked him to come, he'll come.
Because you asked him if it would be okay. Okay. Lisa, what do you make of all this? What happened today?
I think that the Liberal members of the committee, with due respect, Randy, are desperately trying to say nothing to see here, nothing to see here. We're going to study issues. But the crux of the matter is whether or not somebody from the Prime Minister's office politically interfered with a criminal prosecution. That's what it comes down to. And if they think that they're going to use the Shawcross principle to define where the line is, okay, well, fill your boots on that one. But the reality is we need to hear from the witnesses who were there at the time, the practical application in real time of what happened. Jody Wilson-Raybould is incredibly important to that narrative. We moved a motion, Don, asking the committee to agree to ask the Prime Minister to waive solicitor-client privilege so that she may speak, and it was voted down.
You've got a pretty keen sense of smell when you smell something that's not quite right and rotten in this situation. Were you satisfied with this motion, or do you really see a cover-up here?
Well, the people left off the list were far more important than the people that the Liberals invited. And this idea that we're going to go into a long legal study about all the nuances of the Shawcross Doctrine and look at sub judice and all the rest is an opportunity for Liberals not to talk about the main thing. Lisa just mentioned it. You mentioned it in your opening. The idea that somebody in the Prime Minister's office put pressure on the former Attorney General to cop a plea deal for a multinational, very well-connected, heavily lobbying firm like SNC-Lavalin, which has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Liberal Party, 100,000 which was illegal. They got caught in court for that. That when she resisted that, she may have been fired for that, moved out of her portfolio. She was clearly disappointed. We all remember that. And we all remember her letter to Canadians, which said, the role is to speak truth to power and to avoid even the perception of political influence on the Attorney General of Canada. We all wondered, what was she referring to specifically then when she was shuffled out? The Prime Minister said, nothing to see here. And you know what his proof was? Well, then Jody Wilson-Raybould was still in cabinet. The next day, Jody Wilson-Raybould quit his cabinet. So if the proof worked for the Prime Minister in that moment, then the opposite proof also must work against his argument, which is there's clearly something here, and we've got investigations that need to happen, and the Liberals just watered everything down to nothing, and that's unfortunate.
Randy, yesterday the committee chair, Anthony Housefather, was on this show, and he said, you know, we haven't had any direction from the Prime Minister's office. We're open to an investigation. There are a lot of answers that need to be given. Are you telling me your motion, including the witnesses that were in that motion that were apparently contacted by persons unknown to see if they'd agree to be in that motion, are you telling me there was no direction at all from the PMO?
I haven't spoken with the Prime Minister. I haven't spoken to the PMO about this issue. I can't speak for Mr. Housefather, but I can tell you we crafted that motion this morning as a Liberal committee. And Minister Lametti had said in public that he would come to the committee, which he will do, and it's normal to ask the clerk, and in this case the AG, the Deputy AG, to come, Attorney General, to come to the committee. So, and it's appropriate for the clerk to do that, so that will happen. I think Nathan talking about SNC-Lavalin and money going here and there. Let's be clear, campaign finance reform has been in place for over 10 years. Companies can't give money to political parties anymore. Let's be clear. That's the past before I was in Parliament, and you mentioned that today at committee. And what we're talking about here is the Ethics Commissioner is the right person on Parliament Hill, the most impartial person to be able to look at this issue. And the people that were on the Conservative motion will be investigated should the Ethics Commissioner decide that that is in their purview. And that's exactly what is important in this matter.
Do you see the witness they called, Mr. Lametti, who went on this network and others this weekend before the committee even met to say there's nothing to see here? And when asked, have you spoken to Jody Wilson-Raybould, he said no.
And he's even open to defer.
Well, let's not prejudge what's going to happen.
No, but this is the guy that they bring forward to say this guy will clear the air. The least curious public prosecutor I've ever met in my life, where there may be a case of obstruction of justice, which is a 10-year prison sentence that went on in the Prime Minister's office. And he comes into town before the committee even talks to one another and says, this committee shouldn't investigate this. You're telling me that the committee members didn't hear that? You tell me the PMO is not involved in any way? And that this is the witness they want to come forward now and say, we're going to trust his word on this, because clearly he's got no bias in this whatsoever.
It was kind of interesting, Randy, I might be misquoting you, I hope not. I think you said it was basically the committee doesn't have the resources to do this kind of investigation, and that it's basically political theater. How do you respond to that?
With political theater. No, in all seriousness, Don, quite frankly. Listen, the Prime Minister in that clip you just had us listen to is now taking it a step further, and now he's saying it's Jody Wilson-Raybould's fault that somebody in his office lobbied too hard, directed, whatever happened, put pressure on the Attorney General in a criminal matter. And because she decided not to come forward or resign right away, it's her fault. No, it's not her fault. It's not her fault. It shouldn't have happened. We want to know who did it, because implicitly he's saying it happened. He's saying it happened. Right. And I want to know, we want to know, who said it, when did it happen? And the only way to get it, I think, would have been through this parliamentary committee in an expeditious way. We're not going to have that. They want to cover it up. Sure, fine. Okay, they want a committee. So let's see what happens next.
And as the PM is slamming Jody Wilson-Raybould, the great irony in this is that because he's her client in this case, and they are bound by this privilege, he has the privilege to keep her quiet. And when asked, would you just relieve her so she can speak to this matter? He's the one person in the country that can do it. So he's seeking advice from the current Attorney General, who's going to tell him what? The same Attorney General that just told us there's nothing to see here, that everything is fine, is now with the same guy advising the Prime Minister as to whether to release the prime witness in this so that she can speak to Canadians about what actually happened. The twists in this thing are Machiavellian.
Let's be clear that there's no, Miss Wilson-Raybould served Canadians honorably. I'm looking forward to continuing to serve with her as a member of Parliament. We worked on many files together, including criminal justice reform. This is about what is appropriate for people to be able to talk when you're an Attorney General. How do you talk to your cabinet colleagues and people in the Prime Minister's office and make sure that you're able to have frank conversations, but not cross the line into more than that? And that's what the Ethics Commissioner has been asked to do, and that's what the Ethics Commissioner will do. And we are going to look at what the parameters are. That's what our study is for. And I think it's important to mention that what we come out of next week, the witnesses, all of that will be public. And this isn't the only 3 witnesses we'll have come to this study, Nathan. I think that's clear to mention.
Do you see that possibility that you will add Jody Wilson-Raybould or Gerald Butts or Katie Telford to that list when you go behind closed doors?
All of that is on the table for our meeting on Tuesday.
It was on the table today.
Yeah.
You're not ruling it out?
No, I'm not ruling anything
out.
out.
Why not just go with Nathan's motion today?
Because, look, we have to make sure that our conversations as a Justice Committee are not going to affect 2 legal processes that are taking place right now. And I know you cited your 35-year speaker's rule. It's 2019. And we want to make sure we have a legal opinion that if we talk here at the Justice Committee about this, that it's not going to derail a criminal court proceeding against SNC-Lavalin.
People are buying it. I know, God love you, Randy, but people are not buying this. And they know that there's something rotten, and they want to get to the bottom of it, and we want to as well, and we're going to. Because
I get something you
can't
raised
hide
at the
anything in
committee,
Ottawa.
Lisa, I found particularly interesting. You went after the Liberals because there's been a lot of whispers coming out of the Prime Minister and Liberal ranks about Jody Wilson-Raybould was difficult to get along with, and she's sure she spoke truth to power, but she was just prickly and went through staff and all that stuff. What did you think the Liberals should have done in that case?
I don't understand why her character came into a talking point for people to have a whisper campaign in order to damage her credibility. And I really appreciate, Randy, that you said nice things about her right now, because I think we should recognize that
she's an honorable colleague.
She's an honorable colleague, I agree. But people were sent out to badmouth her, and it happened. And I think it's atrocious. And it was gendered language, Don. It was gendered language, and I have a real problem with that.
And watch the difference between what Minister Jane Philpott did, where she put her arm around Jody and talked about what Randy just said, as compared to that slander and slimy whisper campaign that going on. Well, you know how she is to work with. And as Lisa said properly at committee, this is what happens to women when they get to a certain point of influence sometimes, when people just don't agree with them or don't like them. They're able to say, well, you know, they don't say the same thing about men. And when Trudeau did his press conference yesterday, and kept referring to her as Jody, and then referred to his male colleagues as Minister so-and-so and Mr. so-and-so.
And Mayor.
So it's just that inference in there, that undertone, that I've had so many correspondence from women across the country saying that just infuriated them on top of the other issues that are at play here.
You know what?
You've been very sensitive.
A true feminist would know not to do it.
You've been very sensitive on this sort of issue before. What do you feel about that? Should your colleagues have come out full on and defended Jody Wilson-Raybould?
Well, look, I think it's very clear in my comments to CBC yesterday that I'm disappointed she's no longer in cabinet. See, she's there, and she's in our caucus. I'm looking forward to continue to work with her. I think what you're seeing is, I mean, Minister Sajjan also made very good comments about the positive working relationship we have with her. This isn't about the person and her working style. This is about the conversations that people had in the government and what the standards are, and that's what our Justice Committee is going to look at.
Very quickly, can I get 30 seconds? Where does this go now? What happens next?
It's not dead. The cover-up will not succeed. We will get to the truth, and it's going to be painful.
There are more tools in the toolbox. This today was very unfortunate. We tried to get a compromise motion that brought a bit of the Conservatives, a bit of the Liberals together. Liberals just, without speaking really why, just shot it down. But there's other ways that we can move this thing forward.
We will see next Tuesday.
We'll take the political partisanship out of it and have a witness list on Tuesday.
All right. Maybe including Jody Wilson-Raybould.
We'll see.
All right.
Thank you all.
Dare to dream.